Music Business, What Is This? Is a podcast that focuses on the ever-changing music industry and presents issues and concerns that the average and above average musician has or will encounter.
What's up, guys? I'm Jeremiah Hunt.
And I'm Richard Johnson.
This is Music Business.
What is this?
Today we're going to be talking about producers.
Whoa, the producer.
The producer, a very important part of making any product. Google's definition of a producer: someone in charge of the recording process in the recording studio. Producers will have varying levels of creative input depending on the recording artist.
Okay, let's just talk a little bit about this definition. They're in charge of the recording process. That can mean a lot of different things according to the style of music. And today this word is very tricky because we hear it used all the time. But generally, I would say in the past 15, 20 years, because of social media, the term producer has transitioned more into who's created this track or this song.
Right.
Which is partially correct, but it's a lot different than 40, 50, 60 years ago when you were looking at some of the classic producers that we know of, such as, do you have a favorite producer? Or?
Quincy Jones.
Quincy, yes. When you say producer to me, I think Quincy. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, he was in charge of finding the musicians, everything. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going to talk about that today, but there was other great ones too. I mean, what about Rick Rubin? Any of you guys out there know Rick Rubin? All the hip hop stuff, the 90s, this cat was involved with. Late 80s, he was around and he's still around. You know, so there's tons of great producers. Kenneth Edmonds, otherwise known Babyface. Yep, people know his singing and smiling in the camera, but he turned out tons and tons of groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so knowing who the producer is and their role is going to significantly help you with your music business and your recording. And that's what we're talking about today. So someone in charge of this process. So what does that actually mean? That means basically they're there to take your vision and enhance that to the fullest, the best potential. Prime example of that is someone like Quincy. You can look online now. There's plenty of YouTube videos where they're showing how Michael Jackson went to him with his first songs. And you can hear what Michael put together, which was killing. I mean, all the harmony, all the parts were there. And then you hear what Quincy did with that. Right? And you're like, wow. Yeah. I mean, they're both dope, but you could hear Quincy, what he did with it. To me, I kind of look at it like someone who washes their car, right? They wash their car. Oh, the car is clean. And then you take it to a detail place and they put that wax on it. They clean all the grit and everything out of it.
Yeah.
That's the difference. It's like the product is there.
Yeah. But
when they put that gloss on it, it's like, yeah. And that's what a producer really is doing. It's enhancing your vision. Now, the roles and responsibilities, like I said earlier, may change according to you and your style of music. All right. So let's first just talk a little bit about the differences and what a producer is today and generally what it was 40, 50 years ago. When you hear the word producer, what do you think about?
Well, I think the official term, when someone thinks about an official producer, is someone who has worked with sound, like a music engineer or something like that. That's where my head sort of goes to. I typically think of just someone who has creative ideas, someone who has ideas to make your music, whoever's music, sound, enhance, to enhance the product.
So what does that mean to you when you say enhance?
Well, I think one of the ways to find a good producer is to find someone who you really trust. You know, someone who has a good ear and who can connect with your ideas, who can connect with your vision and connect with your music, especially. So, it could vary for, a good producer, because that producer has to know where you're coming from.
Right.
So
right.
for
right.
me,
So when you're looking for that person, what are you looking for?
first of all, they have to know something about music theory.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking for in a producer.
So it doesn't matter if they know about the style of music or what you're doing, because you can have a producer who knows music theory that's a country producer or
it's true,
salsa
yeah.
producer.
Style is important as well. But I think because music theory connects all those things, all of the styles, for me, it's just good to have an idea about what you're about ear training and notes, chords. You need to have a little bit of a knowledge about that stuff.
Okay.
Just so we can, work at a faster pace.
Okay. So be able to communicate that language that you're talking to them with.
Exactly.
Right. And that's a good point. So what you're talking about is finding someone traditionally, not always, has some music experience.
Yes.
That may require them to know an instrument.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, it's not always the case, but
it's not always the case.
Yeah, but depending on your style of music, it may help get things done faster.
Right.
Right. So yeah, generally you'll find a lot of great producers were instrumentalists, or they grew up working that machine or that tool. So they can talk the language and they've been through the process to speed things up and get it done.
Right.
Right. I look at a producer of music kind of like a director of a film company. They're pretty much directing what's going on and putting all the pieces together. Right. So if something is not running fluently or on time, they're the ones who are kind of pushing the buttons to say, hey, if something's taking too long, for instance, you could be in the studio recording a guitar part, and this guitar part is taking 4 hours.
Right.
And you've only got 8 hours in the studio that day. It's easy for musicians to spend 4 hours doing 80 takes. But someone has to say, hey, we got to keep this moving. We've only got 4 hours left.
Right.
Because that affects a lot of different things. It affects their time. It affects your mentality, creative mentality. It also affects the budget. Right? Producers in charge of the budget.
Yeah.
Right? I know for a lot of the projects I've produced, my labels, other people's labels, I'm constantly keeping all these things in mind to make sure the project is delivered on time. I'm a big time person. Hey, we got to keep the schedule to keep this going, especially when you're dealing with bigger companies or TV shows. Time is crucial. Yeah. They're not going to wait for you or to get somebody else. Right? So as a producer, I'm thinking, okay, what do we have to get done? Do we have the people there we need to get it done? Is time flowing? Are we going according to the time we need to get it done to deliver it? Are we ahead of schedule, behind schedule? Can we make up the time? Do we need more time? What's holding us up? Is it the engineer? Right? A lot of times producers have to be the go-between in the studio. Once again, depending on your musical knowledge. If you're talking about a style of music such as hip hop or some styles that, doesn't require a lot of theory, like you're saying, you can have a great producer, but an engineer may not know, okay, what is this thing this guy's talking about? Oh, we need to go back to that section where I say this. Right. A producer can say, yeah, go back 8 bars or go back 4 bars, 6 bars. Okay, great. So a producer, you'll find, knows a lot about a lot of different things. right? And that's how they get things done. Doesn't mean they know everything. They just generally know a lot about a lot of different things. And they have a big network circle that they can find out or access pretty quickly to find out that information to keep the project going according to schedule to make sure it's delivered.
Right.
In general, that's what a producer is doing. And there's, like I said, there's tons of responsibilities that come with that. Like I have a whole list of things. Okay, I got to make sure the budget's cool. Got to make sure I've got the space. Got to make sure the musicians are on time. Make sure I've got the right musicians. Make sure that, just everything you can possibly think of ahead of time, because there's always going to be stuff that comes up that you don't think about.
Right.
Because there's different people, different personalities.
Yeah.
So my job and the jobs I've seen with producers is doing that. And with that comes the responsibility of knowing when to step in and when not to step in. To me, the relationship is similar to a manager, but they're managing that product as opposed to the person. Sometimes they are managing the person,
right,
but it's more focused on getting this product, the recording, done. And that gets tricky because you have to trust your producer like your manager.
Right.
If you trust a producer, if you do a take or they stop a take, you have to trust that what they heard is right. That reminds me of a story. I was doing a recording for a label. One of my favorite recordings I did, 15 years ago. And I wasn't the producer. And we were in the middle. I don't even think we made it to the middle of the take. I think it might have been like the end of the melody. And the producer waved it off. Stop. And I was like, the band was like, what was wrong with that take?
Yeah.
He was like, no, I don't like that one. Right? So I was like, I had never had that happen.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to process, do I trust this guy? Or because it seemed cool.
Right.
And then we did another one and we got the one. But that can, if you don't really trust the person, that can put you in a weird space for the rest of your recording. Because now you're thinking, are they going to stop this one? Or, so you really have to trust and be like, okay. And a lot of times that producer ends up being someone or you've worked with.
Right.
Right? Because when they're assigned to you, it's like, it's just a number. It's just, okay. Even if they have a name, you're trusting the things they've done.
Right.
And if they're huge, then yeah, you're going to say, okay, great. But even that has a time limit on it.
Yeah.
Because you have your vision and what you hear. And that's why I said it could get tricky.
And I think that is good to communicate, to have really good communication between the producer and the sound engineer and the managers. Because obviously the manager is managing the artist, but the producer needs to know everything that's going on with the artist, with all the sounds and everything before the artist comes in to record or what have you. That way things can run smoother.
Yeah, that communication is crucial. And I think a lot of times that starts with just an email. I think a lot of people don't really realize how you write emails is crucial. Right? We've gotten to the point now where the text is the standard outside of business, but sometimes they're connected depending on your circle of friends. Like I get a text, hey, can you do this gig? Okay, cool. If I know it's you, it's no big thing.
Right.
But if I get a text from somebody I don't know, we have to really think about, we actually process that information differently. Even though you may not think about it. Think about it.
Right.
If you send me a text and say, hey, we got a gig next week, it's this time, bam. There's certain things I need to know, but I know if you ask me, it's going to be cool. Now, sometimes I get texts from people I don't know, and they're like, hey, can you make this gig on August 27th? It pays, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have to respond yes or no, but where is the gig? Right. Like there's all these other questions. who am I playing with? It's just the form of communication. Right. So there's the lack of information. And then on top of that, it's how was this written?
Right.
You'll find people tend to write text the way they speak. Same thing with emails, but emails, they're a little bit more formal because they're at a computer.
Right.
So they have to think. I don't want to say think a little bit more, but they address it a little different because they're at a computer.
Naturally,
it's just a different way. But you have to think about the person on the other end who you don't know reading this, so, and that sets a precedent, right? So if I'm reading certain people's emails, I'm like, do I know them? Okay. And think about it this way. People when you see their text, you actually hear their voice. People you don't know, there's no connection.
Right.
So you can take something completely wrong.
Right.
Right. So I bring this up to say that line of communication between the producer, the manager, and the engineer usually starts with an email. And you'll see that a producer or a manager is more professional.
Right.
It's our favorite word, professional. And that sets the tone, right? So you try to respond that way. And as you become more friendly, generally you'll see things loosen up. Generally.
Right.
Usually producers and managers still keep a certain amount of that formality because it is an email and they have to answer to someone as well too. And if something goes wrong, the grammar, this was worded this way, this really meant this, you can alleviate all of that.
Right. Remember that first impressions are lasting impressions.
Yeah. It's even if things recuperate or get better, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something to be aware of. Another thing to really be aware of for a producer is, are they open to learning new things? Right? Great producers are.
Right.
That's how they got there. If they weren't open, they'd be doing one specific thing and they probably would be a 1 or 2 hit wonder.
Right.
But most of the great producers are open to learning new things and listening to you because that actually expands their vocabulary to help someone else when they get called for that situation. Yeah. So if you find a producer who's not open, that's a red flag.
Right.
Right. They have to listen to you and be able to bring what they have and add it to your project to enhance it and make it better.
Right. I mean, just look at the famous producers that we know today. Quincy Jones, who we mentioned before, like he's worked with jazz, he's worked with pop,
everybody.
He doesn't just,
Yeah, why close yourself off too? I mean, that's just not a good business decision.
Right.
You want to be open to more projects.
Yeah.
That's going to give you more exposure and more knowledge as well.
Yeah.
And I would say the last thing on my list is you want to find a producer who is fun.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have to be, but you want to have a person that's cool to have around.
Yeah.
If they're not cool to have around, and I have to be honest, there's been times I have not been the coolest to be around because my headspace is somewhere else. I'm trying to do this job. You don't know what's going on. But you want to make sure that in general, they're level-headed, they're together, and they're going to help make your product a great product by the environment being a friendly and fun environment.
Right. Stress-free.
Stress-free. Exactly right. And that personality trait, to be honest, isn't the easiest to find, and then it's made a little bit more difficult when you add the job of a producer to it.
Right.
Because to have that quality trait and to be someone who's going to complete the job on time, generally those things don't go together.
Right.
So you have to have someone who understands when to cross the line and when not to cross the line. Cool. So that brings us to a close of our episode of The Music Producer. Hopefully you enjoyed your time. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you can find downloaded podcasts, and on YouTube. He's Jeremiah Hunt.
He's Richard Johnson.
Thanks for joining us. This is Music Business.
What is this?
We'll see you later. This program is partially supported by a grant from the Illinois Arts Council Agency.